Hi everyone, and welcome back to the next revision lesson with me, Mr. Bailey. Hopefully you've all had a really good Easter. Hopefully you've had lots of time to relax, do a little bit of work as well, but mainly relax while you're off school as well. I was actually in school over one of the weeks, and me, Miss Sanchez, and Miss Stillnot have actually got a really exciting English project that we're going to be doing with you. So keep tuned for that. That'll be coming out in the next few weeks. And yeah, hopefully now you're all getting ready back in the first Monday of what would be our normal working school week, getting back in the swing of things and hopefully doing some exciting learning on the way. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the sequence now of our revision. So we've already learned place value, comparing how to compare and order numbers, how to add and subtract using different written methods. So what we're going to move on now is the multiplication side of things. So focusing today on multiplication facts. Now, times tables are something that you would find really quite tricky, quite difficult, or you really enjoy doing. It's one of the two things. There's not really any in the middle. There's usually children that can do them, they sort of sail and they find them really, really easy, or children that find them quite difficult. And part of that is memory. Okay, so the more that we focus on something, the more we memorize it, the more we learn them, the more we practice them, the more set they're going to be. Okay, and for some of us, we might only have to hear it once and we'll remember it. It's in there, it's in a long-term memory, we can recall it from our memory banks really, really quickly. However, for some of us, it's really difficult. So we might practice something, we might have to practice something 100 times in order for it to set. But the more times we practice it, the more time we recall that number, the better. Okay? And the easier it's going to be, the more it's going to be set into our long-term memory systems. Okay? So what I'm going to do with you today is talk about learning times tables in general, learning a few little tips, little hacks in there to try to help us learn them a little bit quicker, and also let us know which are the ones that we need to focus on the most. So whenever we think of times tables, we always think of a times table grid that goes from 1 to 12 across the top, 1 to 12 across the bottom. That means that there would be 144 different times table facts for us to learn, which is an overwhelming number. Okay? What I'm going to do straight away is I'm going to assume that we can all multiply any number by 1. Regardless of what the number is, if you multiply it by 1, it's the same number that you multiply it by. Okay, so if I did 7 multiplied by 1, it's 1. If I did 12 multiplied by 1, it's 12. 7 multiplied by 1, sorry, 7, I think I just said 1. 12 multiplied by 1 is 12. 9 multiplied by 1 is 9. 527 million multiplied by 1 is 527 million. It doesn't matter what the number is, it's always going to be the same as what you multiply by. Similarly, if I multiply by 0, my answer will always be 0. It can be 527,819.7462 times 0. Still going to be 0, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's already a few less number facts we need to worry about. Which brings us on to what I've written on the board here for you. Okay, so actually there's not 144 times table facts, there's only 66. And the reason is, if I know, for example, I know my 10 times tables, and I know that 2 multiplied by 10, 2 lots of 10 is the same as 20, I know that 10 times 2 is 20. So whenever I see these two numbers together, I can multiply them either way. I can multiply them straight away by themselves, I can swap the numbers round and multiply them that way as well. So it doesn't matter which way I multiply them. So if I know 10 times 2, I also know 2 times 10. So for example, if I'm focusing on the 2 times tables or the 10 times tables, it doesn't matter which way that I do it, as long as I know that I've 2 times 10 is 20, I can do it either way to get that answer. Sorry, there's people running around just outside the window, it's getting really distracting. I might go and shut the blinds in a sec. So that leads us now to the next kind of thing. So when people learn times tables, they learn the whole times table in order. So 1 times 10 is 10, 2 times 10 is 20, 3 times 10 is 30, things like that. That's not the way we need to do it. What we need to do is to not have it in order, but to quickly recall different numbers. I'm going to teach you some of those ways and methods today. Okay? First of all, we're going to start off with some of the easy ones. So the easiest ones, or the ones that I think are the easiest ones, are the 10 times table, the 2s and the 5s. I'm going to look at reasons for that in a moment. Okay? Then we're going to progress on to the 4s and 3 times tables, using doubling to help you with your 2s and your 4s. And learning those 3 times tables is really, really important because you need them for your 6s. So we're going to then use what we know from the 4s and 3s to help us with our 6s and 8s. So I'm going to show you some reasons why later on. That then leaves us with the more difficult times tables, which I think are the 11s, not difficult, but you know, I'll talk about those in a minute. 9s, again, not difficult, but they don't really fit into a different system that we've used already. 12s and 7s. So for me, I think I've inexperienced, I found 12s and 7s the most difficult. But if you're good at calculating, then there's really easy ways of calculating these really quickly. Okay, so 10 times tables. Whenever we're multiplying any number by 10, all we do is, if I've got my place value column that I've still kept here at the top, I move it one column to the left. So if I wanted to have 7 multiplied by 10 would be 70. Okay, oh, hang on, phone's beeping. Just gonna make sure it's good, still recording. We're not stopped in halfway. So any number here, doesn't matter what number it is, any single digit number, if I multiply it by 10, I just move it one column across. So 3 times 10 would become 30. Similarly, if I wanted to do a number like 12 times 10, as I multiply it by 10, I move both numbers across, it would be 120. So if you're not quite sure on times tables, your 10s are a really, really good place to start. Most people start on the 2s. I recommend starting off with your 10s, because as soon as you know your 10 times table, it doesn't matter what number you've got from 2s, 5s, 4s, 3s, 6, 8, 11, 9, 12, 7, you're always going to know at least one of those times tables because you know your 10 times tables. What you'll see here is I've written all the 10 times tables down. 2 times 10, 3 times 10, 4 times 10, all the way down to 12 times 10. I'm now not going to repeat any of these now because you should know them. So when it comes to the 7 times table, you can see there should only be one fact for you to learn, which is 7 times 7. Because we would have learned all the other 7 times tables facts within the ones that we're doing now. So hopefully that'll become a bit clear later. So now is a good time to stop, practice those 10 times tables. You could do the same as what I've done. You could just jot down any ones that you get wrong, because they're the ones that you need to practice when you're doing your times tables for that number. Okay, so you can pause now, that'd be a great time to practice your 10 times tables. Okay, so now hopefully you've done your 10 times tables back on the 2s. So the 2 times table facts you need to learn. You don't need to learn the 1 times 2 because you know that's 2. And you don't need to learn 10 times 2 because you know that's 20. The rest of them now are a good time for you to practice. The easiest way to do these is to double. If you're really good at doubling and you're doubling all of these numbers, as soon as somebody says a number, you should be able to double it straight away. So 7, double it, 14. 11, double it, 22. 4, double it, 8. And this is how you work out your 2 times tables. You double the number and that gives you your 2 times tables. If you are quick at doubling and you're quick at multiplication, you can do that in just a quick time as it takes for you to recall your 2 times tables anyway. Because all you're doing is focusing on doubling those numbers. So now is a great time again to practice doubling those numbers all the way up to 1 and 12, or between 1 and 12, and give your 2 times tables a practice. Pause the video now, you can stop and do that. Okay, so next times table is our 5. So here I've got all the numbers down from 1 to 12, apart from 10 times 5, because we already know that. We know that 10 times 5 is 50, we know that 5 times 10 is 50. I know that 2 times 5 is 10, and 5 times 2 is 10. So I do not need to practice those anymore. They should now be in my long-term memory, and I'm just going to practice my 3s, 4s, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 12. Okay? 5 times tables. These are the ones that some people can get quite stuck on. Some people find them really, really easy. Okay? There are 2 ways that you can work them out. Okay? Either you just keep going through your head and you know that it's 5, 10, 15. Okay? Knowing that an odd number will give you a number that ends in a 5, and an even number, like 4 times 5, will give you a number that ends in a 0. Okay? Or you can work out your 10 times and half it. So for example, if I know that 7 times 5, 7 times 10 is 70, half of that is 35, because half of 10 is 5. Another quick, easy way if you're really good at doubling and halving. So those doubling and halving skills are really, really important to us. Okay? So 5 times tables, 2 times tables, 10 times tables. Should be quite easy to learn. These are the things that we start learning year 1, year 2. Okay? So pause the video now, give yourself a little bit of time to practice your 5 times tables. jot down any of them that you get wrong that you just need to keep on practicing. Okay, so in that section there were 30 times table facts for you to learn. So we only need to learn 66. If you know your zeros and ones, tens, twos and 5 times tables, then you know nearly half of the times tables that you need to know. And it's quite weird because you only know 3 times tables. However, if you know all these facts and you know them forwards and backwards, then you don't need to learn them for anything else. If I know what 10 times 7, 2 times 7 and 5 times 7 is, and my 1 times 7, I already know a third of my 7 times tables without even having to concentrate and having to actually do any more difficult calculations. Okay, so the next two I'm going to focus on now are the 4 times tables and the 3 times tables. Okay, so slight admission here, and this can sound really, really bad as a teacher who prides himself on being a very strong maths teacher as well. I don't know my 4 times tables. If you are told me to straight away say what the answer to 7 times 4 is, I don't know if it's 24 or 28. However, what I do have is a very good doubling set of skills. So in order to work out your 4 times tables, you take the number that you're multiplying by 4, you double it, and you double it again. And because of that, I've never needed to learn my times tables off by heart for my 4 times tables. Because in the same time that most people take to instantly recall the number, I can work it out in my head. And I can do it straight away. So if I was to do 7 times 4, 7, 14, 28. The answer is 28. If I wanted to do the number 11, okay, 11, 22, 44. If I wanted to say the number 8, 8, 16, 32. 4 times 4, which is a square number, which is why I've got it written in the box. You can see that some of them here I've got written in boxes. These are all the square numbers. We'll talk more about those in a few lessons time. But if I wanted to do 4 times 4, 4, 8, 16. That's how, in the quick, easy way to know your 4 times tables. Okay, so that should be your 4 times tables. Practice that method of doubling again. The more you practice doubling, the easier it's going to be. Okay, so 4 times tables, as soon as you know that trick, should become quite easy, quite simple. So pause it now, test yourself, see which numbers you need to practice. Okay, because you might find that a lot of these you already know, and it might maybe be 7 times 4, 8 times 4, 9 times 4, things like that you might need to practice. So give them a go now and see how you get along. Okay. So now we're on our 3 times tables. So 3 times tables is the first one that we might find a little bit tricky. If we look at the 3 times tables that we need to learn, 3 times 3, then we don't need to know 2 times 3, 4 times 3, 5 times 3, 10 times 3, because technically we already know them. Because we've learnt them in this section here, we know them forwards and backwards, it's the same answer. So our 3 times tables, 3 times 3, 6 times 3, 7 times 3, 8 times 3, 9 times 3, 11 times 3, 12 times 3. Okay, so when you're multiplying by 3, what we need to make sure we're doing is first of all we learn how to count in 3s. That's when we know those numbers and we give them an instant recall. Another little trick, you can see here that I now know what 5 times 3 is. So I know that 5 times 3 is 15. So what I can now do is use this knowledge in order to help me a little bit further on. A lot of times when I ask people what is 6 times 3, they'll go, and they'll start counting. 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and then tell me it's 18. But they've spent about 10 seconds working it out. When I ask them what 5 times 3 is, they go 15. They already know it. So what they're doing is actually, if you're skipping the counting section straight on to the 5 times 3, what's the next number? So if you're going to ask me what 5 times 3 is, 6 times 3, sorry, I'm going to go 15, 18. In my head, that's how I'm going to work it out. 15 takes me to 5 times 3. One more lot of 3 would be 15, add 3, 18. 7 times 3. 7 times 3 is one that I like to learn anyway, so 7 times 3 is the same as 21. And it's one of those, it's quite difficult, but it's something that I've always found. 7 times 3, 21. If I know that one, then I will know 8 times 3 because it's 24. The rest of them, I'll use my 9 times table hint, my 11 times table hint, my 12 times table hint that we're going to look at a little bit later in order to try and help me to remember those numbers. Okay? So, bit of a trick if you're struggling with the 3 times table there. Now we're moving on to the 6 times table. So as soon as you now know your 10s, 2s, 5s, 4s and 3s, you've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times tables. So you already know half of your 6 times tables. Okay? 6 times 6 is a really good one to learn because it's a square number. So knowing that 5 times 6 is 30, 6 times 6 is going to be 36. Can you see now where I'm going with this? Okay, this is one of the methods of learning. I know that 5 times 7 is 35. So 6 times 7. Similarly, I know that 8 times 5 is 40. So 48 would be the answer to 8 times 6. 9 times 5 is 45. Add another 9, 54. 11 times 6, 66. Sorry, I haven't got that wrong. Oh no, I missed one. That's one. 12 times 6. I know that 5 times. So if you learn 5 times 12, that would be 60. Add another 12, 72. Okay. So you can see there that because I'm not used to using that method, I've had to then work them out in my head. Okay. A much easier method if you are good at doubling is to go back to your 3s and double them. If I know that 6 times 3 is 18, 6 times 6 is going to be 32. Because to get from 3 to 6 you double it, so you double the answer. Similarly, 7 times 6, again it's a difficult one. 6 times 6 is 36, 7 times 6 is going to be 42. Using this method of either doubling my answer to 3s or using what I know, so using 6 times 6 is 36 and adding 6 on each time, I can work out what my answers are. I'm going to put a little star here because in a moment we're going to talk about actually you might want to rejig some of this around. In the national curriculum, it states that we need to know 2s, 5s and 10 times tables before the end of year 2. In year 3, we need to learn a 4s, 3s, 6 and 8s timetable. Okay, you can see that I put them here, but actually if you're already in year 5 and you don't know your times tables, you just need to learn them. Your 11s, 9s and 12s are all going to be significantly easier to learn than the 6 and the 8 times table. So if you don't know your 6s and you don't know your 8s, then leave them until you've done your 11s, 9s, 12s, and that leaves you your 6, 7s and 8s, and you will again only have 6 times table facts to still learn. But the curriculum says that we need to learn it this way, so I'll teach you it this way anyway. So 8 times tables, not going to spend a lot of time there because again I think it's one of the more difficult ones. If you can double and double again, then if you double that again you're going to get your 8 times tables. So for example, 7 times 8. If I want to do 2 times 7, so I go 7, double it again, 14. Okay, double it again, I get the 4 times table, 28, double it again, 56. So 7 times 8 will be the same as 56. So 8 times 8, I ate and I was sick on the floor. 8 times 8 is, hopefully by now you're all shouting 64 at me down the camera. So there's easy ways of learning 8 times tables, again, if you're assuming that you are good at doubling. Okay, if not, then move them to the end, try and learn some of the easier facts before, so then you haven't got as many to learn. Some of them, there isn't a nice easy trick, some of them you just need to learn. So 7 times 8, knowing 7 times 8 is 56, I guarantee in every single times table test, 7 times 8 is going to be the one that always comes up because it's probably the hardest one to remember. 7 times 8 and 6 times 7 are the two that are always going to pop up in any times table test that you do, because that's a knowledge of how much you actually know your times tables. Okay, so even though they're in this middle section here, they are actually still probably two of the tricky ones to learn. So 6s and 8s, if you struggle with them, don't worry about it too much yet. I'll tell you a little bit more about the other ones first, and hopefully you won't need to learn as many of them going forward. Okay, so if you do know all those, then that's already 56 of your 66 times table facts that you've actually learned. That only leaves 10 more. And as I said, some of these are actually a bit more easy, a bit simpler than some of these. So I would actually put my 11s into the section and my 9s into the section, learn all my 11s, learn all my 9s, and then put my 6s and 8s in the section here, because I've only got 10 of those key facts to learn. Okay, so 11 times tables. 11 times tables, children always find really easy until they get to 10 times 11, 11 times 11, and 12 times 11. Okay, so 10 times 11 should be simple because it would be, go back up to this system up here, 11 in, move both the two ones over into the next two columns, 110. Okay, any number multiplied by 11 that's a single digit is always going to be the same number twice. So 2 times 11 would be 22, 5 times 11 would be 55, 8 times 11 would be 88, 9 times 11, 99, etc. When you get to 11 times 11, okay, and I'm going to use a bit of a trick here that I'm also going to use with the 12s, is to use what you know already. So I know that 10 times 11 is 110, 11 times 11 is going to be that, add another 11, which is going to be 121, 12 times 11 is going to be the same, if I was to partition that number into 10 and 2, it would be the same as 110, add 22, which would be 132, or 121, add 11, 132. Again, you can try to work out like I just did, but there's no real easy way in order for you to learn them. So you just need to just keep practicing over and over and over. As soon as you've done that, then that's already 4 of our 10 remaining facts to learn that we know. Now we've only got 6 more left. 9 times tables. Hopefully by now, a lot of you know the 9 times table trick. Okay, 9 times table trick with your hands. I'm going to show you rather than me. As I was doing it, I'd be looking at myself doing it. So 1 times 9 is 9. 2 times 9 is 10, 18. 3 times 9 is 27. Okay, so as you're looking at it, whatever number, hopefully you can see my hands here, whatever number you're multiplying by, so if I'm doing 4 times 9, I put my fourth finger down, numbers this side of the bridge are my tens, and this side here are my units, so that would be 36. Okay, if you don't want to start doing your finger method, there's an easy, rather than relying on your fingers and counting, there is a quicker, easy way to do it. That way is to multiply the number by 10 and take away the original number. So if I want to do 8 times 9, 8 times 10 is 80, take away 8 is 72. Okay, 7 times 9, well 7 times 10 is 70, take away 7 is 63. Excuse me. 12 times 9, 12 times 10 is 120, take away 12 would be, take away 10 would be 110, take away 2, 108. So an easy way of using your 9 times tables. Now you can see why I think these two here are probably a bit simpler, and you could probably move them into this section here, swap some numbers over, and practice your 7 and 8s over this section instead. Okay. Now we've only got 3 times table facts to learn. Okay. 7 times 12, 12 times 12, 7 times 7. These are the ones that are square numbers you just need to learn. So knowing that 7 times 7 is 49, 12 times 12 is 144, and 7 times 12, you partition it. So you do 10 times 7 is 70, 2 times 7 is 14, 9 is 84. Okay, so and by doing that, when you practice them and when you know them and you know that it doesn't matter which number comes first or second, if you can multiply them together, then that's going to tell you how to, you're going to know your times tables. You're going to learn them really, really quickly. And by doing that, you're going to be able to use them in the bigger numbers when we come to do long and short multiplication, and when we apply the problems, when we're doing it in everyday life as well. Okay, so again, if you to ask me which ones are the hardest ones to learn, all the square numbers. I think these are quite simple. I'm going to circle these numbers here, because if you know these ones, then the chances are that you know your times tables. Okay, so 7 times 6, 8 times 6, 9 times 6, 12 times 6, 7 times 8, 8 times 8, 9 times 8, 12 times 8, 7 times 12, 12 times 12, 7 times 7. If you know those and you can instantly recall them, then they are probably the most difficult times tables in order to remember. The rest of them use a lot of the skills, the 4 times tables. If you're not quite sure, double it again. 3 times tables, learn them or do it in your head. Count it in threes, 3 lots of the group, 7, 14, 21. Okay? 6s, 8s, 12s and 7s are again the most difficult ones. Okay? So hopefully that's helped a little bit. Hopefully it's probably helped your confidence knowing that you don't need to learn 144 facts. You actually only need to learn 66. And out of those 66, I guarantee that everyone in the class already knows probably at least 10, if not 20, 30, 40, 50 of these. Okay? So that's something for you to be practicing, and hopefully if you were to draw a chart up like I have here, you can be crossing them off as you know them, as you're sure that you know them. So that's all from me for today. Tomorrow we're going to be practicing a bit of short multiplication, I think. I'll need to have a look. I think it's short multiplication. So learning how to multiply bigger numbers, and we're going to practice 4 or 5 digit numbers multiplied by 2 digit numbers. Okay, so hopefully again you've all had a nice Easter. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Hopefully it's helped a little bit. Please do let me know.